afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition, the latest webinar of Confessions of a Business Owner. I'm absolutely delighted this afternoon to welcome Steve Knapp, the sales mindset coach. And Steve's going to be talking to us about that customer journey and essentially where have your prospects, where are they hiding right now? This webinar series is all about helping you understand that why, that purpose, what drives business owners to do what they do every single day and gives them that fire in the belly, because there's too many small business owners for me lose that mojo, fall out of love with the business, and the consequences of that are not good news. So if we can help you understand and dial back into your purpose and your why and give you a few tools and tips along the way, then we're on to a bit of a good thing. So Steve, really appreciate your time this afternoon. Just for all of those that have joined us and all of those that are going to watch on replay, just give us a quick, who are you? What does your business do? How long have you been doing that?
Yeah. And to start, you all giving up your time is quite nice as well. Otherwise, it would have been nice to talk to you, Gary, but perhaps not as nice as it's going to be, right? So thank you, everybody, for giving up a bit of time. I am Steve Knapp, the sales mindset coach, a brand, and I think we'll dig a bit into that in a while. Why is that important to me? But yeah, I'm a sales coach. I'm a sales trainer, and I help businesses actually enjoy selling, which is sometimes one of the biggest challenges I think I ever set myself. Right, that enjoying selling moment. And I do it because it's basically all I know how to do. If that's a good enough reason. I've always been in sales. I was very fortunate that I had 23 years working with Shell International, and a good half of that was in sales, and a big chunk of that was actually designing how Shell sell, which is a big thing to leave a company with. And I understand they still do what I suggested they do today. So I feel quite good about that as well. So always been in sales, and I'm a sales trainer.
Fantastic. Steve, what was that trigger point for you? There was a point at which, and I've been in corporate, I worked for a FTSE 100 business, and, for me, they just weren't putting the customer first. They weren't putting the customer at the heart of everything they did. And that really ground my gears. What was a trigger point for you to set up on your own, and why sales?
Well, I mean, why sales is I probably would have been a bit of a fraud to have done anything other. But what was the trick? What was the trigger point? Well, I had a wonderful time, 23 years working with Shell, and I saw the world, places. I now see them on TV and think, gosh, I'll never, in all likelihood, probability, never get the chance to see these things again. So I had some of the most amazing experiences. And the reason that it came to an end was linked to a number of things. One of the biggest things was austerity. The company didn't have the cash that it used to have, and it started to shut down assets. And it told me that I had to go and move to London if I wanted to carry on in a sales leadership job. I live in the Peak District. The thought of leaving the Peak District to go and live in London rubbed me the wrong way. And I also found, the opportunities were becoming less and less. In a big corporate company, there are things that they have to do. They have to positively embrace diversity. They have to positively reflect gender, and therefore, being a European male and a Brit at that, it was an Anglo-Dutch company, my opportunities were becoming less and less. So I've come to the point where I was told I had to go to London to probably do a job that I didn't want to do. And I thought, something's got to change here. And that's the catalyst for why I made the change.
And you get to that point, don't you? I was in that place after 9 years in a FTSE 100 business, and you know, they get to the point when you're not looking forward to going to work, and whether it's the, you know, the culture, the team around you, the kind of thought of lack of future opportunities, you start to lose that mojo, don't you?
You really do. And I was very fortunate to get more, well, relatively senior, whatever that matters to anybody on the call. I got further and further away from the coalface. I got further and further away from the customers. I got further and further away from coaching. I got further and further away from actually having meaningful and proper conversations. And I remember my first ever networking event that I went to when I set up on my own. And I stood up and I did my pitch. And I genuinely think nobody understood a bloody word I said, because it was all corporate language, it was all acronyms, and it meant nothing. And I listen to how I talk now, and I totally, well, I like who I am now. I don't recognize the words I used before. They meant something in Shell, but they meant nothing over a breakfast, a networking meeting in Sheffield.
Absolutely. And Steve, what is it that puts fire in your belly every day? Because you're starting to get a little bit animated, which I can tell that, you know, that we're getting you excited. But what is it that gets you up and on it every single day? What is it that puts fire in your belly?
It's a good question. And yeah, the animation thing, excuse me, my children often tell me, Dad, calm down. I guess the heart of it is I really am doing something I love to do. Therefore, you know, if I am not enthusiastic, confident, believe in what I'm talking about in such a way that I have to convey it with some gregarious actions and activities, it would be very hard for me to expect you to come on my journey with me, because I believe in what I do so deeply that I have to give my whole self in everything that I communicate and share. And that's the reason for the enthusiasm really behind that thing.
And I think that's a good segue, Steve, because, you know, every small business out there, and there are at last count there's 5.9 million small businesses out there of all different shapes and sizes. Sales is the kind of fundamental need. If you're not generating sales, you've got no business. But when I mention the sales word in front of a majority of those business owners, I can literally see them fill up with dread. Why is sales such a hated word? Why is the kind of just the pure thought of selling, just why does it, you know, shudder people? And
well, I mean, I don't know how people feel around the room. I mean, hands up if you think sales is a dirty word. But there's this whole thing. It's a stigma. And it's a very well-deserved stigma, because there are always people in segments and sectors that behave badly, right? And therefore, as business owners, we don't want to be associated with the word selling, because actually if I associate you as somebody that sells, I'm putting you in the same category as somebody that phoned me up while I was watching EastEnders to talk to me about my washing machine, when actually I don't have a washing machine, but you told me my sort of guarantee was running out. Well, this complete nefarious outreach that we've become a, you know, sort of almost a void. Yeah, if you think about it, all the way from snake oil sales, right? One potion curing all ailments, you know, all the way through to the reputation of secondhand cars, double glazing, insurance. There's always been somebody that stands out as not acting ethically. And therefore, the easiest thing as a seller is to say, I don't sell, I market. I'm marketing, I'm not selling. And actually, that's the point here, right? Selling is, to your question, something we all have to do. But not all business owners grab the skills that are needed to become as good at selling as they need to be to succeed. And that's the point. It's the stigma, and it's well-deserved.
And I think that's a fair point, isn't it? You've all had bad experiences, and whether it's getting that sales message on LinkedIn within 0.3 of a millisecond of connecting with somebody right through to that phone call or whatever it might be. But do you think we create our own stigma? Because if we go into a sales meeting and we don't do a very good job, or the prospect ghosts us, or they've been saying all along, we really want it, and then they go radio silence, do you think that creates its own stigma, that we then think it's us that are bad at sales, and we're afraid to put ourselves out there for fear of rejection again?
So I think there's a lot of truth in that, folks, and I think, so whenever I work with a business around their sales process, which we question whether that's there or not, but the first step around call preparation and preparing, and ultimately that's about valuing your time and your prospects or your customers' time equally. One of the challenges that I see in smaller businesses is they don't put that investment in at that preparation phase. Therefore, it's far too easy, well, it was, to go and have a cup of coffee. It's far too easy to follow up next time. It's far too easy to leave that meeting and say, that's what I meant to say. That whole piece is actually devaluing your position. So you go back again and say, what I meant to say last time was, it's not really very good. So there's a whole inefficiency and ineffectiveness in that. And I'm not saying don't use the time to build relationships, build a position of credibility, be that know, like, trust kind of person. But don't waste their time and don't waste your time. That's a big thing. And of course, when you leave and you haven't had the result that you wanted to have, you end up saying, I'm not very good at selling because I didn't get the answer I wanted to get.
Yeah.
Actually, it was because you didn't prepare. You didn't prepare on all eventualities around what might have happened. That's why you got the bad result in most cases.
And Steve, that preparation is key, and it's a drum that I beat all the time. Has the buyer's journey changed over the last 4 months as a result of what we've seen around us? And
for some people,
why and how has it changed?
Yeah, for some people, it's completely changed. I mean, it's fundamentally changed. So if you take me, I'm a sales trainer, and I sold training to people who had brought their sales teams into a room. Well, that journey has fundamentally changed, right? They don't want me in that room anymore. Yeah. I don't want to go in that room, by the way. So there has been this sort of need that's changed, but there's also been an acceleration of a behavior that was happening anyway. So if you think about selling, you think about the act of selling, you're engaging with somebody that actually wants, I don't know, a piece of information. They want a solution to a problem. They want an insight that they can't find. So the act of engaging with somebody that's going to sell often means, it's going to take too long. I don't want to get involved. I just want to cut straight to the point. And what's been happening is, over time, is that buyers have been moving online, right? There's no surprise there. Think about yourself as a consumer. You research so much now before you actually speak to somebody. Yep. There are stats out there, and I think it's 57% of a buyer's decision is now made before they actively outreach to speak to somebody. It's massive. What's happened with COVID is that has probably grown. And I think when the next research comes out, it's going to show us that people are doing their research online much more. So when they engage you, they're actually ready to buy.
Yeah.
They're actually ready to buy. So your job is to sell to them before they're ready to be sold to, right? And that's what you do with your content. And I think that's the biggest change that COVID has accelerated. As a seller, you've got to recognize where your buyer's journey starts. And it doesn't start when they invite you to see them. It invites a long, long time before that.
Yeah, do you know what? And I think that's a very pertinent point. That, I mentioned to you earlier, I've had 2 new clients come on board in the last 10 days, specifically as a result of content that I've been pushing out and the brand and the reputation I've built. So when they've come to me, they've been in buying mode, you know, and one in particular, I've literally gone from never spoken to the guy to a meeting to a summary of what we discussed to raising an invoice and payment within 10 days. And no, did I start that journey 10 days ago? No, I started that journey months ago before I even knew he existed. And that's what you're talking about now, isn't it? You start that journey before you even know that that person's interested.
Indeed. And you have to be cognizant of that, right? So as a seller, if somebody invites you to talk to them, okay, you'll have a few checks and balances, but assume that position, assume that they are in buying mode, assume that they are, you know, they've invited you because you've stimulated that interest to their problem. Because if you go back and start selling to them again, you're telling them something they don't want to hear.
Yeah,
I know that. No, I'll come back next time. No, don't come back next time. Deal with the situation now. So this is such a massive change. And we call it probably more modern selling, but it's really recognizing that who your buyer is. You've probably spoken about ideal clients. You've probably spoken about personas of clients, but this is so important that as a business owner, the persona that you worked to 4 months ago, you revisit it because that buyer has changed. And if you are talking to a buyer of 4 months ago, you're potentially missing out the ability to talk to them right now.
Absolutely. So what as small business owners do we need to be doing differently? You know, if the buyer has changed or the buyer journey's changed and we need to reflect that, I presume, what do we need to do differently as small business owners? Now there are some shoots of opportunity being created. What do we need to do to get on the front foot and start generating some warm leads and some new business?
I think it's a good question, and I sort of kick this one around myself because I need to find the answer to this as well, right? So I think it's recognise is a few things. I think first one is recognise the problem that they had 4 months ago might not be the problem that they have today. So today businesses are just getting their stuff in order, right? So the problem you were solving before might have been about generating cash. Now it might be about cash flow. So think about the problem that you're solving and has that changed? Think about the decision-making unit. So clients that I have that I consult with, the owner of the business had delegated responsibility to the sales manager prior to lockdown. Now that authority has gone back up the chain. So you have to check as a seller that the decision maker is still the decision maker, right? So am I still solving the same problem? Is the decision maker still the same? And the other thing you need to recognize as a seller is that if it on average took you 30 days to close a sale, it might take you on average 60 days now. So you need to recognize the new normal. So there are certain things in that space that suggest that you have a level of knowledge around your sales process, your sales structure, your buyer, and how you go about your selling. But those are the things that I would say look at. Make sure you recognize those things, because fundamentally, if the motivation has changed, the decision maker has changed, and the time taken to make a decision has changed, your sales approach needs to reflect that.
Steve, we'll come on to sales approach in a moment. One of the things that I find that business owners have a real issue with is asking those leading questions. You know, have you got a budget for this? Are you the decision maker? Have you got a time scale by which you want to get this done? You know, there, because I'm trained in sales as you are, those things come naturally to me. You know, why would you go have a meeting with somebody that's got no budget? It doesn't make sense. So how do we convince people, or how do we put people in a place where they can ask the right qualifying questions? And that might well be sales process, but how do we get people to ask the right qualifying questions so they don't waste their time or the client's time?
And I think that's really, really fundamental, isn't it? I mean, how many times have you thought you've closed the sale to actually be told, don't have the money? Hang on a minute, we've been talking for 3 months.
Yeah.
And I get that. And I've been selling for 30 plus years, and I still get enthusiastic and still get carried away with these things. To the point, I guess the answer to this question is it's your filter at the very front. And it's your filter at the front, which is why in a traditional sales approach, you might sell to everybody. And I put a step before that where I call these people suspects, not prospects. So recognizing the difference between a suspect and a prospect, I found in my sales career to be a really, really important filter. And I have 3 very simple filters, and yours might be the same, they might be different, but working them out is really important. And you've mentioned them there, Gary, really. Mine is, do you want or need my product or service? Do I have other customers, clients like you that want or need my product or service? Therefore, I can make a good guess that you would. The second one is, do you have a budget? And your point about is that awkward to ask? Well, I think that's a mindset piece, because actually I think it's quite a fair question. I think it's a very fair question. So you want me to solve this problem for you. Can I just check that if I solve it, you've got the money to pay me?
Yeah.
Or you've got the budget authorized? Yeah. I think these are valid things to ask, and it's a mindset, but it's about knowing the value you add versus the cost as well. And then the third one is, are you in a position to make the decision? And what's really good about asking that question is if they say no, you say to them, well, who else do we need to involve?
Yeah.
If you say to them, who else needs to be involved to make this decision, you get to know that they actually can sign off or can't. So if you get those 3 things in, when I get those 3 things in place, they want or need my product or service, they have the budget, they have the authority to spend the budget, I'm going to love them because I know they're an ideal client.
But sales is about removing barriers, isn't it? If somebody desperately wants your product, the job of a salesperson, a business owner selling, is to remove those barriers to sale. Because if you can't remove those barriers, you're gonna just have a discord between their need and your need.
I think what's happened in modern selling, just to support that, but maybe just build on it, is modern selling, we're removing barriers far much earlier. So we're not removing barriers at that point of conversation. I mentioned it earlier. We're actually removing barriers through many other of our interactions. And that's where really understanding what your buyer is buying and why they're buying it, what problems you're solving. Everybody goes, yeah, I know that. I know what problems I'm solving. Well, do you? And do you know how that manifests in a good outcome for the person that's buying it? Because that's what your content needs to be talking about, right? Your content needs to be telling people about the upside of the solution, not what you're selling. And I think this is where the content goes wrong. Content talks about what I'm selling, not the value or the problem I'm taking away from you. So the job of sales, without doubt, is to remove those barriers, but we have the ability with our digital platforms to remove those barriers much earlier. So when we go to visit customers, the conversation is all about the insights that they couldn't research, all the stuff that they couldn't find out that actually differentiates you from the other person they've got visiting you the hour after. That's the magic. The magic is not to talk about all the stuff that they're going to talk about the stuff that they're not going to talk about, because that's where the magic happens.
And is that part of a process? How important is a process to the selling game, and what are the key elements in that process?
I mean, this is a big topic that I know we don't have full time for, but you know, regardless of the size of a business, a sales process is a fundamental thing, because what it does to me is rule number one is it tells me you recognize your buyer's buying process. So if we have a sales process that doesn't match our buyer's buying process, change your sales process.
Yeah.
Right? Change your sales process, because that's the point of your sales process, right? That you're actually matching your buyer's buying journey. Why is a sales process important? Because we buy in stages. We buy in steps. I've already mentioned that we research. We've already mentioned that we then have that conversation, which is probably a negotiation. We then probably have something about closing a deal. We then probably have something about payment. So we have stages. And my sales process could be very different to your sales process, but you need to recognize those stages of your buyer's buying journey. Why is that important? That's important so you can ensure that your communication works. It's important so you know your sales skills are being enhanced to maximize the opportunities at each step of that process. I worked with a client only the other week where they realized that it wasn't the process or the messaging, it was their negotiation skills. Now, had they not had that phase in their sales process, they couldn't have recognized that out of the 30 leads at that phase that went to one, actually was nothing to do with the offer, was nothing to do with the pricing, was nothing to do with the marketing. It was entirely to do with their strategy around how they negotiated or didn't negotiate in this case. So a sales process is important on a number of aspects. You match how your buyer buys and you improve your own approaches and sales skills. And without it, you're just shooting in the breeze. We're busy, right? We're busy. We're busy doing selling. No, you're not. You're busy having conversations. You're busy chatting. Busy selling is saying this sales call is moving this opportunity from this phase to this phase. These are the questions I'm going to ask. These are the answers I anticipate to get. And if I don't get them, this is my plan B. That's the point about a sales process. And the absence of a sales process means you're just being lucky. And I wish you all the greatest of lucks. Some of my best sales have come when I've been lucky. So let's not take luck away from business, but let's try and eradicate the need for luck by putting structure, skills, and processes in place.
And I think that's a very key point, because if we don't have a structured process, and that could be a 5-stage process, a 25-stage process, or anything in between, you've got to be able to measure how successful each stage of the process is, right? And if for example, we're having loads of coffees, but we're not getting loads of follow-ups or business over the line, you know, adding a part to the process that says, you know, are you my ideal? Do you have a budget? Can you sign this off? Are you ready to rock and roll? You know, are you solving a problem? Are you delivering a demonstrable ROI? You know, you can then understand what your conversion rate is at each stage of the process, can't you?
Yeah.
And if you can understand your conversion ratio and you can understand your burn time, but in my language, that's the time from knocking on a door to winning the business. If you understand those numbers and you measure each stage of the process, you can see where you need to tighten your process up. So do you need more leads in? Do you need a better conversion, etc.?
100%. And if we've got any money people on the call, the other value of a process, and my best friends when I worked for Shell used to be my financial officers, because I gave them confidence. I could tell them that this much was in the sales funnel, this was our hit rate, these are our cycle times, your burn time, this is the result I'm anticipating. Therefore, we knew what cash we had to invest, and we knew where we needed to invest to get better results. Really fundamental pieces. It's the magic of a sales process. And I have a 7-step process. As you rightly say, it could be 3, open 1 lost. It could be 25. You see them over-engineered, in my view. I have 7. And that's a traditional B2B sales process.
And Steve, how much of the selling process, whether this is a written down process, an in your head process, however long it is, how much of sales in SME terms is about mindset versus actual process? Because you can have the best process in the world, but if your mindset is I can't sell, I'm not good at it, my conversion's poor, you're not going to go out and sell. So how much of this is mindset versus process?
This goes a bit back to my why. I set my business up because mindset. I can't flip your mindset, but I can help you through confidence to change your mindset. And this is where I think process comes into it, because I can show you through using a process of pre-call preparation, you'll get better sales outcomes. So by showing you how the process complements your results and therefore should breed more confidence is where it comes into it. So, I didn't call myself the sales coach. I call myself the sales mindset coach because I use process to help people overcome and understand where their strengths are and where their limitations are and where we need to focus to help the result. Because there's no point bringing a sales trainer in if we don't increase results and we only increase mindset. But one thing I can guarantee is if we get your mindset right around selling, your sales results will also increase as well. So for me, it's a double-edged sword or two sides of the same coin. I don't think you can just train sales process. I think you have to do it with an element of confidence. And I think you have to do it with an element of safe environment, with training, with practice, because that's what breeds the results.
Absolutely. And just to come back to the title of the webinar, is the problem without having a process and without having the right mindset, does that manifest itself us believing that the prospects aren't out there, that they're hiding, that they're ghosters, that everybody stopped spending money because of COVID? Do we convince ourselves that everybody's hiding? And is a process and a mindset going to flip that into they are out there, I just need to go smoke them out?
And again, I think it's too easy just for me to say they're out there, come on, this COVID world, get on with it, because that's not true. I already said I sold things to a room of training. The room doesn't exist, but I had to listen to my ideal client. And my ideal client was telling me, we still want it when the time's right, post-furlough. We still don't want you in the room. We want it via Zoom. So both of those things are in my control, waiting and putting it online. So I think buyers are still there. It just might be you have to adapt your offer to meet their current needs. It might be that you're in an environment where you're making hay while the sun's shining, if that's not a terrible thing to say at the moment. But there are places that sell safety equipment that are having bumper and booming months. They've got to be careful that they don't overinvest in something that is situational. So I think this is the point. Prospects are always there. It's whether you have worked out what they're buying, what problems you're solving for them, and how you as a seller add that value that nobody else can add. That's the key. People will always buy. You as a seller will just likely have to change what you're selling or how you're selling it.
And I think that's a very key point as we come to a close here. I put a slide up in a presentation going back a number of months, if not years ago, and it was who made the money in the gold rush. And it wasn't the people on their hands and knees in the stream looking for gold. It was the people selling shovels, and it was the people selling jeans that gave them, kind of robust clothing to be knelt in a stream. And look, I think your point there around COVID's right. I think there's a ton of printers. I think there's a ton of online businesses. You know, I've got an online business that have been working well 4 o'clock every morning because they've capitalized on people not being able to go in shops. So I think it's about understanding where you can add value and solve a problem in a particular situation, isn't it? Yeah. And I hate the word flip, but there's a lot of businesses, whether they've delivered their existing product in a different way or they've started to offer a slightly different product, but they've listened to customers and provided a solution to a problem. Yep. And that's created opportunities.
Yep. Agree.
Steve, last question. If you get your process right, if you get your messaging and your marketing right to the right persona, if you get your mindset right, is it possible to get your customers into a position where they want to buy rather than you having to sell?
Yeah, so this is a really good question, isn't it? So I talk a lot about modern selling and the difference between marketing and sales. Now, back in the day, you would have a marketing department and a sales department, and the gap between it could actually be a city, right? Now it's the same function, almost. I think there's a cigarette paper between your marketing activities and your sales activity. So I think the key for any business owner at any size is to ensure your marketing and sales activities are umbilically linked, that there is no way that anything can pass through those activities. Because if 57% of a buyer's decision is made before they even invite you, it's yours to lose. But it means that your marketing messages are doing your selling for you. So it's about your messaging, your content, your consistency. And then it makes selling the most easy and natural conversation in the world. That's the truth. If selling is hard, go back, start again, because you're doing the beginning wrong.
So what you're saying there is if 57% of people have made a decision before they come to you, in theory, once they come to you, they're already wanting to buy because they've been through that evaluation process. So that kind of credibility, that trust, they've evaluated you, you match brand wise, they want to buy. They're in the shop wanting to buy from you.
Yeah.
With the right process and the mindset, the rest is over to you.
Yeah. And I'd rather take something that's near a 67% over the line than something that is way, way back at a place I don't even recognize or understand. Fab. It's really important. Modern selling should be the most natural, logical, sequential number of steps and conversations, all supported by your content, your blogs, your social, your digital, things like this. It's all part of that 57%. And then when I come to meet you, you already know who I am, what I do, and it's only then do I show you the things that you didn't know that I'm teaching you, that you go, my goodness, I made the right choice inviting you today, didn't I?
Fab. You're solving a different problem. I'm going to open this out for questions. I know there's one or two in the comments box that I'll pick up in a moment. If anybody else has got any questions around sales process, how you can smoke your prospects out, mindset, anything at all related to sales, just post them in the comments box and I'll pick those up. So Tanya's got a question here that Scott also says. So if your potential client has a budget, your initial meetings have gone well, you've submitted your proposal and are waiting to hear back from them, any guidance on how many times you should follow up or how long for them to come back to you? It's sometimes tricky finding a balance between stalking them and giving them too much time.
I know, isn't it just? So the word salesy is something we also recoil from, right? I don't want to feel too salesy.
Yeah.
Let me give you some more stats. I've gone really stat light, by the way. I could throw them all out at you. 5 to 12 contacts before you make a sale. That's the stat, 5 to 12. That means by the time people have consumed your content, and by the time people have made the decision to reach out to you, you have been invited to have that next conversation. So if you are holding back because you think they don't want to speak to you, they do. They do. They've engaged with you, they've consumed your content, and they're ready to go. If what you've put to them is a proposal and a quotation, and you're now going, when's the right time? Well, think about what agreement you made when you left. So I'm going to send you a proposal. Did you say, if I haven't heard from you by Tuesday, I'm going to give you a call? If you didn't, build that into your sales process. If you did, well, the time's passed. There's also an opportunity for you to think about that 5 to 12 contacts. Have you written a new blog? Have you created a new piece of information that might be interested? Oh, by the way, I know you're making the decision on the proposal, but here's my latest blog on this that might also help you in that decision. So I guess feel that you've earned the right to get there. Think about how your content can re-engage with the person. And if you've done all the qualification right at the front end, and you've gone to the right part of asking, when can I follow up with you? You've earned the right. You've earned the right to do it. Don't hold back.
Yeah, another one in there, which I often say is, you know, if you're selling to business owners that are or can be quite often very busy when they're in the office, trying to get somebody to respond to your email or your phone call when they've got a million other things to do can be tricky. So it might be they're not coming back to you, which is purely down to workload. So I will often say to a client, not only, right, how long do you need on this? I need 3 days, right? I'm going to ring you in 3 days. But I will say, what's the best method to contact you? And what's the best time of day to call? So I've got one client who said, you know, you will not get me between 8:30 and 5:30 because when I'm in the office, I'm on it. But I'm in the car at 6:30 every morning for an hour. Ring me then. So I built that into the process. I asked the question. So I ring him at 7 a.m. and he goes, right, I'm ready to talk. Talk me through your proposal. Bingo, job done. So don't be afraid to ask those questions. Jane Fisher's got a good question here, which is, you know, again, we could answer this over hours, but any good tips or things to avoid when it comes to LinkedIn, raising your profile, your business profile, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, social selling or social marketing, right? So remember, your LinkedIn profile is just a marketing piece of collateral. So my advice on LinkedIn is to treat it that way, but personalize it. So this isn't about sales messages all the time. This is about value and insights. Think about your LinkedIn profile and how you can use that to share, create, and connect to your ideal clients. It isn't a sales pitch tool. You've probably heard this many, many times. But what people often miss is the social element to it. It's called social media after all, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a big clue in that. So building a network is as important as actually the marketing side of things. So LinkedIn is a different space that we can certainly talk about another time, but personal brand, creating that position of authority, ensuring that when people do therefore reach out to you, the 57% of decision is made, you've done all you can to feed it with the authority positions on LinkedIn. So don't be afraid to share what you know. Just don't share how you do it.
Yeah, and I think the if I can add a tip to that, you know, often the stuff that you know and take for granted, your target audience don't know. So quite often we tend to complicate things. So as an example, you know, in my years of sales training, I did a lot of work on key account management. I had a client come to me and it was clear he needed key account management. I didn't position it with him because my assumption was he would know all about key account management. He did. Sorry, he didn't. Just because I did doesn't mean he does. So even the most basic of things that you do, assume that your target client doesn't have those. And it's a way to add value. Great question here from John. John's based over in California. So John has a product that he sells to a distributor. The distributor sells to a plumber, and the plumber then sells to the home or business owner. Is it one big process, or is it 3 different processes for each of those stakeholders?
Yeah, so this is a great, it's a great question if you work in distributor space. So when I was at Shell, I had to design the sales process for the Shell distributors. And what's really interesting, John, about your question is it's working out whether you're a sell through or a sell to model. So are you responsible to sell to the distributor, or are you responsible to sell through the distributor? So where does your point of sale? And when you know what your point of sale is, your sales process needs to be defined by that. So if actually you only get paid once your distributor sells, then you need to show how you support your distributor with how they sell. If you're paid at the point of when you sell to your distributor, that's where your process kind of needs to stop. So it's working out, what is your sales model? Sell through or sell to? And you can devise your sales process based upon that definition.
But if I add to that again, if you were saying earlier, you've got to make your offering better. It's got to solve more problems than your competitors' offering. So John, you need to understand that each of those stages in the process, if I'm that homeowner and I'm given a choice of 2 products or 2 plumbers, how do I make sure they choose yours? And work all the way down. Same with a plumber. How does a plumber choose which distributor he goes with, or which product he chooses from the distributor? And how do you get the distributor to use your product? My experience of the distribution model, and John, you and I were in the same business when we did this in the late 80s. We used to sell air conditioning products through distribution in the UK. We developed relationships with the end user. And then when the distributors chose the product that was most profitable for them, rather than anything else, we chose to go direct and cut the distributors out. So you've got to understand who's buying it and what problem you're solving more than your competition. So John, I hope that answers your question. Any more questions, ladies and gents? We've covered a lot of ground this afternoon. Any more questions? If not, we will bring this to a close. So Steve, where is the best place? I'm going to send a note out tomorrow with the recording on. Where is the best place that people can contact you?
Yeah, LinkedIn would be the place.
So if I put your link on the email that goes out tomorrow, and people can just connect with you directly and take it from there.
Be very grateful. Yeah, be lovely to connect with you all.
Fantastic. We're not running a webinar next week. We're going to move these very shortly to every 2 weeks, just to give me a little bit of rest, and probably give some of you guys, as lockdown starts to lift, a little bit of rest. But in 2 weeks' time, we've got a lady called Vicky Hood, and she is one of the owners of a new business, Spring Top Group, and they are specialists in helping businesses sell. And we're going to be talking about how to get ready for sale. Now, whether that's the pricing mechanism, whether it's creating a competitive environment, whether it's building the team, whether it's, is your business capable of being sold? But we're going to be talking about how to get your business ready for sale, and that's in 2 weeks' time. So that just leaves me to say, Steve, some great insight there, loads of tools and tips. Thank you very, very much indeed. And for all those that have joined us and all those watching on replay, hopefully that's given you some insight into the sales process and mindset, as well as how you can really dig deep and start to really understand and articulate your purpose, your why. So thanks again, Steve, for your valuable time. Thanks for everybody for your valuable time joining us, and take care. Have a good rest of the day.